Check this scenario out for Thursday Night Football. Tom Brady and Daniel Jones are dueling it out in an epic battle between the old gen of quarterback versus the next gen. But in the fourth quarter, Daniel Jones takes a cheap shot from a Patriots defender who gets ejected and will undoubtedly get cut the following morning by Belichick. Then in comes Eli Manning, the Patriot killer himself, and he's got to at least get the ball into field goal range for the Giants to tie it. On 4th and forever, Eli is rushed out of the pocket and has Golden Tate streaking open 30 yards deep, and in similar fashion to the scramble and throw that led to David Tyree's legendary helmet catch, Eli launches the ball downfield to defeat Brady and Belichick once again, but the ball hits the turf 5 yards short of Golden Tate and skips past the defenders. Life comes at you fast, Eli. But these Thursday Night Football games are on a hot streak right now, so let's not jinx it. If Saquon plays, then we'll probably leave this game feeling like we got the best possible versions of these teams regardless of the outcomes. But it looks like there's definitely going to be some rain in the forecast, so they might hold him out one more week rather than throw him out there in sloppy conditions. But regardless, I fully expect the Patriots to come away with the W here. I mean, how often have we had high hopes for a young quarterback to perform well versus Belichick, and then he just shuts them down in boring Belichick fashion as usual? The Patriots are favored by 16.5 right now. I wouldn't bet on the Giants covering the spread, even though 16.5 points is a pretty large margin. You never know when Belichick is going to just assert his dominance on an opponent and completely blow them out, especially with a rookie quarterback at the helm. The rain is an intriguing aspect to this spread because if it's a sloppy downpour, then it could be a blowout neutralizer, but still, Patriots win 28-17. So I wanted to switch it up this week and do things a little bit differently. I really want to keep doing these each week, but I was so focused on trying to make these weekly pick'ems look like an ESPN broadcast with my own little flair, and I think that I just bit off more than I could chew. I've been pulling all-nighters trying to get these done for Wednesday mornings, and even that's been a challenge. I want to make more in-depth videos like the ones in my Road to the Super Bowl series and monthly mock drafts, but with the time that those take, I can't be spending as much time on the weekly pick'ems as I have been. We haven't hit the likes goal on these weekly pick'ems for the second week in a row, and both times I'm willing to take the blame because last week there was the name glitch, the week before that the video was late getting uploaded, so those are my fault. And I can't tell you guys though how much liking these videos does help this out, especially if you're watching this before Thursday Night Football. The more likes within the first 24 hours of posting, the more people that YouTube will show the video to, which means more people will watch it, more likely we hit the goal each week. And then with my sponsorship flaking on me and even trying to pay me half of what they agreed to, well, this has been a frustrating experience compared to last year. So anyways, if I'm going to keep making these weekly pick'ems, I definitely need us to hit the goal of 1,000 likes each week. Help a brother out, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if this is your first time. Let's get back into week 6 of my weekly NFL pick'em. First up, we've got Panthers and Buccaneers playing in London. And if there's one preseason prediction that I'm proud of through 5 weeks, it's calling Christian McCaffrey for Offensive Player of the Year. But if you had told me that he'd be doing it without Cam Newton, I probably wouldn't have believed you. That Panthers defense has been rolling too, and it'll be interesting to see how it translates in London. The Buccaneers showed us that the game in LA was an aberration, and the game against the Saints was a reality check for them. I mean, Mike Evans, where you at, bro? But I do like the idea of sending a divisional matchup to London each year. Those four guys always get the worst matchups, but this one could be an important game down the stretch, so there's going to be a lot on the line here. For Ron Rivera and the Panthers, this will be their first game in London. Bruce Arians took his 2017 Cardinals overseas to get stomped 33-0 against the Rams, because guys, these games in London are hard to prepare for, and even getting stomped 33-0 gives you better experience to prepare for next time. Both coaches though are on my short list for potential Coach of the Year candidates, so I expect them both to be prepared. It's also our first rematch of the year, strangely enough. It seems like a really fast turnaround for a divisional rematch, but it will be interesting because Cam Newton was a shell of himself in the first matchup on Thursday Night Football, and Kyle Allen really seems to have allowed this offense to get vertical, which has been opening things up for Christian McCaffrey. I like the Panthers in this rematch because honestly, Jameis Winston is just too unstable from week to week. He tried throwing multiple interceptions last week early in the game, got bailed out by penalties. They still got blown out kind of in that game. It made it interesting in the end, but I just hope that Winston can get out of that London nightlife without getting himself into trouble. But naturally, I'm sure that Mike Evans will go off after Marshawn Lattimore shut him down last week, and OJ Howard might even get involved this week. Who knows? This stuff has been pretty unpredictable. The Bucs are 2-point underdogs, and in my opinion, you'd have to be a wild man to bet on a London game, and I'm avoiding such a close spread in a game that is proven to have wildly unpredictable results. Panthers win 24-21. Bengals at Ravens. The Bengals are only one or two more pieces along the offensive line away from having a much better team in general next year. They could probably even keep Andy Dalton, let the final year of this contract of his expire while he bridges the gap for Tua Tagovailoa or Justin Herbert. Then they'll be getting Jonah Williams back, and it's going to make it seem like a complete overhaul along the O-line. Billy Price might even seem like an actual NFL lineman with an upgraded supporting cast around him. As far as the Ravens go, Lamar Jackson seems to be regressing slightly each week, so I'm hoping that we can see that come to a halt this week and see some improvement from him against a lesser opponent. You don't want to sleep on divisional games and just assume the better team will win, even at home, because we saw last week with the Broncos upsetting the Chargers that you can basically throw out records in these divisional matchups. I'm still taking the Ravens though. They are favored by 11.5. I always predict the score in my notes before I look at the spread, and this 11.5 point spread is really close to my 30-19 score. After the Ravens made former third round pick Tim Williams a sacrificial lamb because their pass rush was lacking, I think that the Ravens have a chance to beat the brakes off the Bengals, so 11.5 points is intriguing. Ravens win 30-19. Seahawks at Browns. The Seahawks are coming off a big win on Thursday Night Football against the Rams, where Russell Wilson made one of the greatest throws you'll ever see to Tyler Lockett, who also deserves credit for an amazing catch. This team is looking like a complete squad that can give anybody a game anywhere or anytime, and Russell Wilson, he deserves to be in the early MVP discussions. On the other side of the spectrum, however, the Cleveland Browns seem to be self-destructing before our very eyes, or maintaining the old Cleveland status quo, however you want to frame it. The offensive line is terrible, and Baker Mayfield is becoming the modern poster child for a sophomore slump. I mean, Nick Bosa and Richard Sherman really got in Baker's head on Monday Night Football and set the tone early. And then Richard Sherman was trying to fabricate this pregame handshake thing, which it was pretty overblown, but it does seem like Sherman went into the game hoping to mess with Baker's mind from the coin toss. So Albert Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. For example, me picking the Browns to win each week. It definitely feels like it's reaching levels of insanity. The Browns have cost me a ton of games already this season in the pick'em, but they are a different team at home and have bounced back from these humbling performances. The Seahawks are doing the dreaded West Coast to 1 p.m. Eastern time kickoff thing, and they have a tendency to start slow on the road anyways. So even though I think that the Seahawks are a superior team with better coaching, I'm picking the Browns in an attempt to get my money's worth on them for one of these previous Browns picks, while also going against the grain and hoping that this is a step in climbing back in the pick'em. Browns win 27-23. Saints at Jaguars. I've been picking against the Saints, but Sean Payton and the coaching staff has been crushing it with the game plan each and every week to get Teddy Bridgewater in position to succeed. This really is the perfect offense for Teddy to finally have some NFL success, because as you can see, that Vikings offense is still dysfunctional years later. But now the Saints have to take this show on the road. The Jaguars' Minshew magic ran out last week against the Panthers, but barely. Football Outsiders have the Jaguars as the 5th most efficient passing offense in the NFL, so this Minshew to Chark thing, it's legit. This connection is really firing on all cylinders for these guys, and it's also really hard to say 5 times fast. Jaguars win 29-24. Texans at Chiefs. This is a big one. We've got Deshaun Watson versus Patrick Mahomes. There's a Sherlock Mahomes and John Watson joke in there somewhere, but stay tuned to my Twitter account. Maybe I'll figure something out by Sunday. Last week, Deshaun Watson and Will Fuller got on the same page like we haven't seen since 2017, and this Texans passing game is close to reaching its full potential just in time to go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs. Watson wasn't sacked last week for the first time all season, but it's unclear if that was a reflection of the offensive line finally starting to gel, or if it was an indictment on how bad the Falcons defense really is. The Colts took an L last week for the first time this year at home to the Colts, but I don't think anybody ever really thought the Chiefs were going to go 16-0. It was all about finding the team that just matched up poorly with them, and the Colts are a bad matchup for the Chiefs. Potentially an even worse matchup than with Andrew Luck at quarterback because of the overcommitment to the running game from the coaches and the discipline that they have to stick with it through and through. But the good news is that if you got the Chiefs wrong on your pick'em last week, don't worry, because everybody but Colts fans got it wrong too. But yeah, limiting possessions and milking the clock is the recipe to give the Chiefs fits. Fortunately for them, the Texans don't have an offensive line or a running game like the Colts, but this Texans passing game is getting into a rhythm, and the ankle injury to Patrick Mahomes might be enough to cause the Chiefs to suffer back-to-back home losses to AFC contenders. Now, I'm not bold enough to call the upset here, but I am hoping that all defense gets put on the back burner for this one, and we see a dumb amount of points put up between these two quarterbacks, and that Bears fans on their bye weeks can watch and look at the quarterbacks that their team passed on for Mitch Trubisky. Chiefs win 42-35. We had a winless matchup between the Cardinals and Bengals last week, and this week we get Redskins versus Dolphins. The Cardinals-Bengals game was at least a decent game, but expectations should be even lower for this one. The Redskins fired head coach Jay Gruden because he was a below-average coach that saw the writing on the door coming into the season, and he barely made any effort to get any kind of production out of this roster. I mean, worse rosters than this one have won games within the first month of the season before. Now Bill Callahan succeeds his second Gruden brother as head coach, this time for the Redskins, and guess what? He also doesn't think that Dwayne Haskins is ready to play yet. The Dolphins are coming off their bye week, and this is their best chance at a win until week 16 when they play the Bengals. I actually don't think that this team is as bad as the numbers suggest because they've been historically bad on defense so far. I think it starts with the offensive line not providing any kind of inconsistency, and then the rest of the team is just sort of crumbling around them. This Redskins roster, however, is a lot better than the Dolphins, and their strength is along the defensive line, so they should start by crumbling that pocket around Josh Rosen. With Bill Callahan calling the shots now and actually giving a damn, I expect this Redskins offense to look a lot better moving forward. The Redskins are favored by 3.5 points, which is pretty sad considering the spreads that we've seen against this Dolphins team thus far this year. And betting on the Redskins would be questionable because this team could just as easily go to Miami and get stomped by a team that spent an extra week preparing for their best chance to win of the year. I would take these 3.5 points with caution, but I still think that the Redskins win 24-10. Eagles at Vikings. Both of these teams took care of business against New York teams last week and now head back to the Midwest to play each other. The Vikings already got their revenge for that NFC Championship game a few years ago where the Eagles just wiped the floor of Lincoln Financial with them 38-7 to then go on to win the Super Bowl. But with like 70% of this Vikings roster still intact from that team, you know that one regular season win wasn't enough and they should come out guns blazing in this one. Both teams are dealing with some crucial injuries, but the biggest names that might miss this game are Deshaun Jackson, Ronald Darby, and Xavier Rhodes. The Eagles cornerbacks are actually in shambles right now. Avonte Maddox is probably out also, so this might not be the best time to run into the Vikings while they're trying to please these wide receivers with a friendly game plan to get them all involved. The Vikings are 3-point favorites and are much better at home than on the road, but the Eagles are a really well-coached team that performs well on the road. But if the Vikings win, I think that they cover those 3 points because it's going to be either feast or famine for this Vikings offense. It really just depends on who shows up. Vikings win 31-24. Falcons at Cardinals. Disappointment doesn't even begin to describe the 2019 Atlanta Falcons, but if they lose this one, then just leave Dan Quinn and the entire coaching staff behind in Arizona. Kyler Murray and company got their first win of the season last week and are the most efficient running offense in the NFL per Football Outsiders. It's their 29th ranked passing attack that's holding them back, but here comes the defense that allowed Deshaun Watson to carve them up, so maybe Kyler Murray has his first really big day passing against this Falcons defense. Problem is, this Cardinals defense also isn't very good, and I anticipate this Falcons passing game to respond in a big way. The Falcons are only 2.5 point favorites, and on paper, this should be a blowout in favor of the Falcons. I think that the Cardinals make a good game of it, but the Falcons should cover by a field goal at least. Falcons win 26-21. 49ers at Rams. Okay, 49ers fans, I'm ready to give this team some respect because they earned it and they deserve it for their performances thus far. In contrast to the opinion in the comment section, I actually really like the way that this team is built, from the head coach to the running backs to the defensive line. My only hesitation with this team coming into the season was it felt like there was a lot of injury-prone players being relied upon basically at every single position, from the quarterback to the second overall pick to the all-pro cornerback. There were just too many question marks, and that doesn't typically end well. And that's why I'm still hesitant if this roster will be able to keep everyone healthy for long enough to make a run at this thing. But where I truly think that I underestimated this 49ers team is the head coach, Kyle Shanahan. I mentioned last week that his game plan would be the thing that beat the Browns, and it sure as hell was. I mean, in fact, I think that we're in for a treat this week with the matchup against the Rams, because I don't know if you remember that 2017 Rams 49ers game. It was a 41-39 shootout on Thursday Night Football. That game is still one of the more exciting regular season matchups in recent history. And then the Rams, they're struggling to hang on to the division lead, and a second straight loss to a contender in the division could be devastating for them. They're dealing with some big injuries too, with Clay Matthews, Dante Fowler, Brandon Cooks with a concussion. All these guys are potentially going to miss this game. It's going to come down to these young offensive minds coaching these teams, and Sean McVay hasn't had a game this year where you left thinking he was the genius that everybody claimed him to be last year. I do think that the Rams bounced back with the 49ers on a short week, having to travel, and seemingly wrapped up in Baker Mayfield's handshakes and flag plants, both of which I enjoyed as a spectator, by the way, but those are distractions, so we'll see if they have any lasting impact. Rams win 34-27. Titans at Broncos. The Titans are another team that I just can't seem to get a read on this year, and I guess even though my expectations for the Broncos were not that high coming into the year, I expected more consistency than this. This is definitely one of the hardest games of the weekend to predict, and the only advantage that I see for either team would be home field advantage for the Broncos. Otherwise, these two teams are pretty similar in the fact that they both got average quarterback play with above average defenses and a pretty good set of running backs that seem to be underachieving on the reg. This is such a weak matchup that my key matchup for the game is going to be simply the Titans offense versus the Broncos defense, because I think that's where this game is going to be won. Broncos are 2.5 point favorites, and I'll take the Titans as an upset in this one any day. The Broncos are still not a very good football team, and I'll chalk up the upset to the Chargers as a divisional rivalry fortune because the Chargers are just that inconsistent of a team. The Titans win 17-14. All right, now let's take a quick break and update you guys on the weekly pick'em group. I had another rough week, but improving with 9 games. And then we've got a 4-way tie for the top spot in week 5 with 2 random ESPN fan names, Elon Musketeer and BDP 1999, all with 12 games. And we finally have an undisputed leader of the group right now with 54 total picks correct, and that is Benny J. If you guys want to join the group, the link is in the description below. Let's get back to the picks. Cowboys at Jets. The Cowboys fell off pretty quickly after their schedule got a little more challenging, and while it seems promising to have the Jets up next on their schedule as a cure-all, the Jets are getting their quarterback and their tight end back this week, so this is definitely not going to be a walk in the park like everyone is assuming. And if this Cowboys roster looks past the Jets and then towards the Eagles, who they play the following week, then this definitely has the makings of a trap game. I do anticipate Sam Darnold to give the Jets a lift, but the Jets have got bigger issues than just a quarterback, and I won't be surprised if Adam Gase is one and done in New York. His future is going to hinge on how well he does with Darnold over the remainder of the season. Ultimately, the Cowboys are going to get a game that was tougher than they anticipated, but there's just more talent on this Cowboys roster, and the coaching staff usually does a decent enough job against lesser opponents. Cowboys are favored by a touchdown, and taking the Cowboys -7 is a bet that will have you sweating for 3+ quarters, but in the end still pays off with a double-digit win. Cowboys win 34-24. On Sunday Night Football, we've got Steelers at Chargers. I'm really glad that Mason Rudolph is okay after that devastating hit, but the Steelers don't even stand a chance in this game with Devlin Hodges at quarterback. I swear, I thought this guy was a punter when he came in for Rudolph. On the other side, the Chargers, they are too good of a football team to be losing to teams like the Broncos last week, but expect them to get back on track this week, and the only thing that the Steelers will outscore them in will probably be fans in the stands of the Chargers' quote-unquote home stadium. Give me the Chargers -7 all day against the third-string quarterback. Chargers win 30-13. And then on Monday Night Football, we've got Lions at Packers. Here is the moment that the Lions have been waiting for. This is their chance to truly get some respect around the league. They had an extra week to prepare while watching the Eagles and Cowboys move the ball against this defense through the air and the ground, but it's going to come down to the Lions defense being able to slow Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones down. Packers jumped out to another big lead last week, and if it wasn't for the Cowboys stepping on their own feet, Packers may have blown another lead late in the game. That kind of complacency falls on the young head coach Matt LaFleur, because Mike Pettin has been doing his thing with the defense, but it feels like they've been taking the foot off their gas offensively and putting their defense in a bad position and letting teams back in the game. With how bad officiating has been this year and the reputation that Lions fans love to remind us about how much the refs hate them, I don't see any other way for this game to go down than with some tragic calls against the Lions, costing them the game in the end. However, I am pretty uneasy in this one, and I feel like it's set up for the Lions to pull the upset, and with the Lions only 4-point underdogs, I think that there's high potential for the Lions to cover, if not win outright. Right now, I've got the Packers winning 26-21. That's going to do it for me this week. Thanks again for tuning in. Please make sure you hit that like button. We need to hit our goal of 1,000 likes, or I'm going to get fired and we're going to have to bring an interim head coach in here. Good luck to everybody's football teams except for the Jets, and I will see you all in the next video.